repeated it, right? Which means I actually defamed him again. So why this defense is pulled out and dealt with, even though it's really an element, is because of the impact of that. So what happens if I said that about him? I said, it's damn well true that he's like that. And then he sues me and I say, it is true. He is this. And then I can't prove it. So we got publication. If I can't prove it's a true statement, it's treated as an untrue statement, and it damages his reputation. But I did it twice. So what happens is, when you do this, when you argue this, damages go way up. So if saying this in class would have amounted to $10,000, maybe 20, when I go and say it was true, and I don't prove it, the judge will punish me by tripling the damages. So if it was originally going to be 20 grand, he'll say, okay, but since you tried that and it did not work, you defamed him again in court, that's going to be 60,000. Go ahead.
On top of the 20,000?
Generally, they just triple the original amount. Something like that. So it doesn't usually get added. And although I talk about triple, it's not a math thing, right? It's not automatically it's 3 times as much. It's the effect is to significantly increase the amount that was originally going to be given. So what happens, let's use something a little bit more concrete, okay? So let's say that I said Win Juan cheated on his midterm test. And I said that in class, and that's why I'm not going to let him write that. This next one, right? Say that. And he didn't cheat. He sues me for defamation, and I say, he did so cheat. He's a no-good cheater. And I file that in court. The judge will take that as an aggravation of the original tort. So maybe the original tort, I might have gotten 20 grand for again, and now, and don't look at his math, but double, triple, quadruple sometimes could be the impact of that. So what should I have done if he sued me and I couldn't prove it was true? What? I should pay him. I should settle. Which I'm not going to like doing because I think it's true. But again, is it fair that I can't prove it but I know it? No. But if we go back to business decision, should I pay him 20 or should I allege it's true when I can't prove it and have to pay 60? What's the right business decision here, folks? Pay the 20. Get on with your life, right? And that's the math. So this first defamation defense is called justification, and that is saying I am going to argue that my statement was true. And that's a very risky, dangerous defense. It basically goes on the basis, can I prove it's true? If I can't prove it's true, I shouldn't say it was true. So did I talk about the student eating the paper last week? No. All right, so I don't want to pick on anyone anymore. Can I pick on you? What's your name? Jenna. Jenna? How many? Oh, I remember this now. It's all coming back to me. Okay. So let's say that I'm giving a test in a course, and it's a closed exam. You're not allowed to have anything. You have to just come in with your pen and memorize something. And I see Jenna take a piece of paper out, clearly got all information on it, and look at it and start writing down answers. Okay? So is she cheating? Yes. Okay, yeah, okay. So, and I walk over to her to accuse her of cheating, and she takes that piece of paper and puts it in her mouth and chews it up and eats it. And I said, what was that piece of paper? She says, lunch. I said, you're cheating. Do I know she was cheating?
Yes. Yeah.
Do I know she was cheating?
Yeah.
Right? I know she was cheating, but can I prove it?
Nope.
No.
She's going to say, no, I didn't have a piece of paper. That was just something I was eating. There was nothing in it. I'm a poor starving student. I have to eat paper. Right? So, I say, no, you're cheating. Publication. Untrue because I can't prove it. Damages their reputation? Does calling someone a cheater damage their reputation? Yeah. Sure it does, right? So she would sue me and she would win. Even though I know that what I said was valid. If you can't prove it, shut your mouth. Go ahead.
Are you going to go over destruction of evidence at all?
No.
Okay.
Anything having to do with evidence is mostly out of bounds on this course because it would be 3 courses in itself. Right? So we don't deal with that here. All right. So we got this, this, and this. Justification is saying that you're going to argue that that element isn't there, and it's a dangerous thing to do. Second, it's called absolute privilege. I can't spell this. I think that's right. There are 3 situations where you can never be sued for what you say. Never. Even if it's publicized, even if it's untrue, and even if it damages a person's reputation, there's no way to sue. There are circumstances that are called absolutely privileged. You can't be sued. These 3 are when you're testifying in court. So if the lawyer says, well, Mr. Smith said you stole his apples, I could say, Mr. Smith has never told a true statement in his life. He is the scumbag of the earth. He is so low that he could slink under a snake's belly with a top hat on. I can't be sued for that. Why? Because the obligation to tell the truth as you see it trumps the ability to be sued for defamation. They don't want people being afraid of saying things because they might get sued when they're sworn to tell the truth under oath. So for that reason, in a court proceeding where you're giving testimony sworn under oath, you can never be sued for defamation. Okay? You can say whatever you want. The second is in government, in the legislature, or in parliament. So you people have seen a parliamentary session or a legislature session. How many of you went to the legislature when you were going to school? Did you do that? Or you don't? Well, maybe not in school. You went and you watched were the people sitting there, all of the elected officials?
No, not sitting there, just the place.
You just saw the place? No, it's got to be them sitting there. Did anyone ever go to school and see the legislature in Manitoba when they were... Anybody? You did? You did?
Yeah, I did. I don't really remember much, but...
Well, I expect you might remember it because they behave horribly. Right? They're like little children. You know, or elected people. All they do is yell and scream at each other and say insults to each other, and they throw paper, and it's just ridiculous how infantile their behavior is. But you cannot be sued for what you say when you're in there. So an elected official can say, well, Jones over here is stealing money, he's just robbing the taxpayers and taking it for his own personal gain. Can't be sued for that. As long as it's in the open session of the House or the legislature. You can't be sued for that. So, The third absolute privilege is between spouses. So I can go home and talk to my wife and I can say, that Win won, I got him in my class, he's just a big no good hoe, right? And if he finds out that I publicize that to my wife, even though it's publication of an untrue statement that causes his reputation to be damaged, I would have the absolute defense of absolute privilege. If she goes out and repeats that to someone else, though, can he sue her? The answer is yes. It's only the communication that is made to a spouse that is privileged. So these are absolute rights to say anything you want. There are basically three of them. This is one of the most, this next one is one of the vaguest, the hardest to pin down, to fully understand defenses. This one is vague. Okay? So, like this is absolutely clear. Is it in one of these places? Yes, no, whatever it is, right? There's no debate. It's a very easy thing. This next one is tricky because it's not a really clear concept. I'm going to warn you about that before I go there. Carlos.
Manuel.
And shit!
Almost there, almost
there. Keep whacking me. I'll keep, eventually I'll smarten up.
It's just, you said there were 3 cases for absolute privilege?
Yep.
And what
Court, government, like legislature, parliamental proceedings, and between spouses. Those are the 3. So this one is called qualified privilege. This defense arises when there's some obligation for someone to say something, and they say something that is untrue, meets that, it's a publication of what you say, but they didn't do it because of hatred or meanness. They just got it wrong. So there are circumstances in which people are expected to make statements or say things, right? And if they're not doing it maliciously, like because they don't like the person, they can't, this will be a defense if they get sued. So one of them, I'll give you an example of the situation. On my very first day in Brandon, I got here on a Sunday, right? And it was a nice day. I got my shorts on. I decided to walk around, see what the place was like. And I was wandering around downtown. It was about 2 o'clock on the Sunday afternoon. Pretty quiet downtown Brandon at that point in time, right? I'm just wandering around. Nice, beautiful day. 25 degrees. Just flying and looking around, saying, oh, yeah, this is a nice place, and everything else. And all of a sudden, 5 police cars come vroom, vroom, with their lights on and no sirens. They come flying up, and they pull up to a building down there on about 10th Street in Rosser, right? One of those places in there where the jewelry place was. There was a few, and across from the TD Bank, you know where that place is, folks? So I was on the north side of Rosser, and all of these police guys come flying up, right? And they'll get out, they got their guns out, and they go into this building, and I'm sitting there going, whew, this is kind of cool. Right? First day on the job, and look at all this excitement, right? So about 5 minutes later, they kind of come out kind of slowly. And apparently what had happened is there was business there, and some guys had broken into it in the afternoon, right? They broke it into it in the afternoon. So I'm standing there watching and things like that. And all of a sudden this police officer comes over, and he says to me, do you have any identification? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, would you produce it for me? And I said, I don't have to. And then he kind of got that cop look, Cop look, so you give me one of those. But I said, but it is a nice sunny day, so I think that I will anyways, right? But I do not have to. So he asked me to produce ID, and I actually gave him my business card, which identified me as being a lawyer in town. Okay, at this point in time. And he got a real chuckle out of that. Because the reason he was asking me is this woman across the street had come up to him and said, I think he's one of them. By the way, I wasn't then, okay? Right? I wasn't one of them. But she said, I think he's one of them. Well, is that publication of an untrue statement? Does it cause my reputation to be lowered that I'm breaking into places on a Sunday afternoon and apparently not getting anything? So she would have this defense. You know, there's a duty to talk to the police, right? There's a duty. If the police need information, that there's kind of a moral obligation. And she didn't do it because she didn't like me. She wasn't trying to get me in trouble. She made a mistake. But a mistake, normally, is no defense, right? If you publicize an untrue statement, you know, if I say that Jenna was cheating, but I made a mistake, she didn't even have a piece of paper, it was just my bad eyes, because I've been teaching this course for 20 frickin' years. You know, I make a mistake, she can still sue me for that. The fact that I made a mistake is completely irrelevant, right? Because the test is there publication of an untrue statement that caused the reputation? We don't ask why you thought it, right? But here, it kind of matters when there's a duty. So there's circumstances in which people have some sort of obligation to talk about people, like including if there's a crime that's committed and somebody thinks you did it, right? That maybe they should tell the people. What else would be a situation?
In this case, though, aren't you assuming that she saw it? Or is she just feeling like she has to talk to them because she's talking to them?
I'm not sure it matters. The question is, really, is there a duty in this circumstance to say what you think? And was she doing it maliciously?
She wasn't. But the idea is that whole 5 minutes of fame to talk to the police, right?
It could be something else. It could be a negligent statement. We're going to talk about those a little later on tonight. Okay? But when it comes to defamation, I think she would have this defense. When else are people obligated to say something about other people where this could come up? Where they say something, they might say something wrong, but...
What about during a press conference?
I don't think so. I can't think of a circumstance. We're going to get to a political one later on. That's a different defense, but I don't think there's an obligation to speak out. What about a job reference? Somebody phones me up for a job reference. Have I got an obligation to talk about them? I think so. What else? Where there's an obligation to say something about somebody.
A site inspector?
Maybe. Or maybe, you know, I've got to write a report on students that I think are having trouble, and I say that this student's really struggling with stuff. She doesn't seem to understand anything. I write that. Those are the types of things that could fall underneath it. The problem with this defense is it's vague, right? I don't know. You will not be in a position to be comfortable in using this because of the fact that you can't really know. So you need to know it's there, and it can be useful. It's just that you will not be able to predict an answer on this one just because it's not a really clear thing. Whereas this one and this one really are. Can you prove it? Right? Did they say it in court? The last one here is called fair comment. And fair comment is the defense that gets used in situations where we have people that are public people, that have some sort of, they put themselves out there. So they've created a public interest in themselves by what they've chosen to do, and as a result of that, people will talk about them. And there's a very, very specific defense here when it comes to public people. But this is probably the most complicated defense we're going to deal with because it actually has elements. There are actually 5 things you've got to prove in order to do this. So the first thing you've got to prove is that the person you're talking about is a public person. Can somebody tell me who's a public person?
Bill Gates.
What? Bill Gates. Is he?
Public?
Yeah. Is he a public person? Probably.
President?
Any politician, right? By their very nature. Bill Gates, I think you're right. The question is, why is he a public person? Is he a public person because he's wealthy? No. No way. There are wealthy people that you would not call public people, right? Why?
He's the figurehead of a company.
He certainly has been, right? A figure of a company. So I just want to be careful with that one because I think you're right. I think he is. But I don't want anyone to think that it's because he's rich, right? Rich people are not public people. Public people are people who have put themselves out in front of the public.
Yeah, he promote for his product.
He's doing more than that, though. He's got a foundation. He's got a charity. He's giving away money. You know, he's doing stuff. That's the part that probably makes him a public person. Steve Jobs was a public person. He was the spokesperson for that company. He went out in public. He talked in front of large people. He asked people to come in and see what he has to say. Those would both be examples. Politicians. So the President of the United States is a public person. Any of our political people, anybody, you run for office, you are placing yourself in public. People are going to and have the right to comment upon you. What's the other group, folks, that you haven't talked about yet?
On social media.
I'm on social media. I'm not a public person.
Celebrity.
Yeah, celebrities, right? People who are actors and actresses, musicians. They go out in front of the public. People are interested in them. They're going to talk. And they do have some rights to talk. And sometimes they'll say things that are defamatory. And sometimes they can get away with it. Not always. So, the starting point is you have to have a public person. You have to have a comment. A comment is an opinion. You cannot be stating a fact and use this. You must be making a comment. So, what's the difference, okay? If I say, they're a moron, that's a comment. If I say, they stole $10 on Tuesday from Steve, that is not a comment. That's an allegation of a fact, right? That they've done this. To have this defense, the statement must be recognized as a comment, not a statement of fact. But there has to be a fact. You're going to see this because these things start to tie together. Just hold on to that one a minute. And the fourth one is the fact has to support the comment. In other words, I'm going to give you an example of this. It's going to make this clear. You have to have a public person. The statement must be a comment. There must be a fact, and that fact makes this comment reasonable, right? So, if I said, the President of the United States is a moron, okay? Is it a public person? Am I giving an opinion, a comment, or am I saying that he has a certain IQ? Are there facts on which one can come to the conclusion that he's a moron? Right? You know, even the tweets that he sends out would be a basis for that. Whether you agree with it or not, they would be a basis for it. So there has to be a fact, and the fact has to be connected to the comment. And the last one, it can't be malicious. It can't be because I have a personal problem with this person. So, probably one of the most famous cases involved a politician out of BC. And for you to understand this example, you've got to understand right-wing and left-wing politics, okay? So, I'm not sure everyone does. So, I'm going to give you a quick mini version of what I'm talking about here, okay? So, generally, we tend to define politicians as being either right-wing or left-wing. And this is dependent on how they want things done and what their beliefs are. A quick version of this, folks, is right-wing politicians believe in lowering taxes and providing less for people. Because they don't have the money, but they're going to lower taxes. So you're going to pay less and get less. That's basically the philosophy. Left-wing politicians believe in providing more for community, and as a result of that, they will tax at a higher level. Do you understand the basic difference between those? Anybody have serious disagreement with what I've said? So that's the quick and dirty nutshell of this. So in Canada, generally speaking, progressive conservatives are considered to be right-wing, and NDP are considered to be left-wing. So if we get an NDP government in, you can expect to get higher taxes and maybe more social support. If we get a true progressive conservative government in, we're going to have less taxes and less social programs. Okay? That's the choice you're making when you're voting. Got it? Okay. So if we look at progressive conservatives being right-wing, so I'll even draw it up here for right. Right? This is right, because in case some of you don't know, this is left. Okay? So if we put progressive conservatives here, this guy named Bill Vander Zalm, he was a member of what's called the Social Credit Party. And although it sounds like it's social and socialist, it was actually way over here. They were fairly extreme right-wing politicians. And there was a newspaper that tended to be more left in its viewpoints that printed a picture of him. It wasn't a picture, it was a cartoon, a drawing. And this is a fairly famous drawing. It may even be in your textbook, or you don't have to look it up though, because this isn't that important. But Bill Vander Zalm, there was a picture of him, and he was sitting at a desk, this cartoon of him, and he had this evil grin on his face. And he had this fly by its wings, like he was pulling the wings. And on the desk, there were three piles. A pile of wings, a pile of flies that had no wings, and a pile of flies with wings. So the idea was he was gleefully picking up the wings, the flies with the wings, tearing the wings off, putting the wings here, the flies there, and then doing it again. Okay? So, this is what a fact would look like. Is the cartoon saying that Bill Vander Zalm, on his way to work, goes to the fly store, picks up a bag of flies, and sits at his desk and pulls the wings off? Are they saying that what they were depicting is a fact? That's what happens? What do you think?
No.
No. What were they actually saying? What's the message that they were giving? What would you call someone who gleefully pulls wings off flies?
Sadistic.
That he's sadistic, that he's cruel, something along that line. And you see that that's a comment. It's not a fact. They're not saying that he actually did it. They're saying there's comment. But if you're going to make that comment, there has to be a fact. If you're going to say he's mean and sadistic, there has to be a fact. And the fact has to support this. So there was a fact. The fact was that with a stroke of the pen, what he did is he cut welfare payments across BC by a third. Just like that. So if you had a single mother who was trying to raise their kid on $1,000 a month, he said, everybody's down, you're going to get $700, $600, $650. Deal with it. So that is a fact. He cut the welfare payments. Whether you agree with it or not, folks, I'm not asking for your politics, but is that fact supporting the allegation that he is cruel? In other words, if someone cuts welfare payments, can you say that they're cruel or sadistic? I'm not asking if you agree with it. I'm asking, can you see the reasoning?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay? So that's what's required here.